have the result instead of this kind of like, this weird situation where the client is kind of telling you what to do all the time and you just do it.
Personally, I've been in that situation where you've got an expectation for billable hours, but you've got a client that either, wants to share a lot with you, or one of my most troubling experiences was I had a client that we started on a project. There was an estimate that was given, and we started getting involved in the discovery phase, and we started to see that there needed to be more discovery phase. They weren't as prepared as originally thought. There needed to be more meetings. There needed to be more discussions. There needed to be more paperwork drawn up or documents put together. And I kept telling this client, like, we're going over what we had originally scoped for. And this was years and years ago, but we're going over what we had originally scoped for. And, for us to continue to consult with you, I need to issue a scope change. And this client wouldn't even talk about it. They were like, I am not paying for consulting. You guys are here to build this application, blah, 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 and just went on and on and on. And I was beating my head against the wall because I saw the end coming and we were going to go over budget and my boss is going to show up and say, what the heck is going on? Get on the phone and tell the client they got to pay more. I was just devastated. I was at the end of my rope. This continued for like 2 weeks.
And I've had that happen for months.
Yeah, it was just insane for me. And at the time, finally, I just got to this breaking point, like you said, getting out the baseball bat in a way. And I told the client, I said, look, if you want to continue sitting around and brainstorming, then it's going to cost more. And they were like, oh, well, brainstorming, yeah, I'll pay for more brainstorming. And I literally just changed the word from consulting to brainstorming, and the entire relationship changed. I remember driving home thinking like I was on another planet because I had been stressed so much for the last 2 weeks that now everything was fine. I sent them an additional thing for like 30 more hours or something, and everything was fine. Do you find that when you're talking about the difference between bidding things out of their value versus do you feel like the nomenclature has to change quite a bit when you're having those conversations, or do you feel like it's just more about how we're setting it up from the beginning and everything else is just as it should be?
That's a great point. So I want to mention a few things that were raised by what you just described. So one of the things that I often forget to tell people, and so I'm glad you brought it up, is that I never talk about value pricing with clients. This is inside baseball talk for us.
Right.
As far as they know, I give them a fixed price. This is the price. This is how much the house costs. Take it or leave it. And sometimes, rarely, they'll ask me how I calculated it. Mm-hmm. And I'll say based on past experience.
Right.
And that's the end of that. And if it's like, what is it? Is there something wrong with the price? Do you need it higher? Do you need it lower? Like what? I mean, I'm not going to negotiate it, but it's fine. If it's too high, fine. Just tell me, and I'll try and recommend a junior developer. I'll try and put you in touch with someone else who's cheaper. And this is all predicated on the notion that I've been saying all along from the beginning of the relationship that I'm definitely not the cheapest option. In fact, I will probably be the most expensive option. Are you sure you want to keep having this conversation?
Yeah.
So it has some to do with setting expectations. In terms of language, I never talk about how I set prices. I just say it's based on experience. Mm-hmm. And there was one other thing you brought up there. Oh, the scope creep thing. So one of the things that I do to sort of insulate myself against scope creep is to be very, very focused at the beginning in the proposal, in all of the early language. And I do make sure this is in the proposal. We focus on the goals and metrics that we can track throughout the process that will indicate that we are getting closer to the goal. There's very little. It's extremely downplayed in my proposals what I'm going to do. So I don't say, I give some information about what I'm going to do because I know I'm going to have to do it. Mm-hmm. It's utterly clear because certain things you do know at the beginning. I'm definitely going to have to do X, Y, and Z. So I'll put that in the proposal just so that they know that I heard what they said and, the proposal looks like the conversation we had. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to emphasize the outcomes. The outcome is, it could be something super tangible like your conversion rate on mobile will double, or it could be something more intangible, but something we can measure, like employee morale, developer morale, that sort of thing. And I will talk about those outcomes, and then I will put a price on the outcome. And along the way, some of the things I said I was going to do, I might not even end up doing, but no one's going to care if we achieve the outcome.
Right.
And once you achieve the outcome, you know you're done. So it's not really a question of scope creep. Now, the thing that will happen is that, let's say you're in the middle of a software project, it's a 6-month website build, maybe from scratch. And the sales director comes running in because their main competitor put a carousel on the top of the homepage, and man, isn't that cool? We should definitely add that into this project.
Always add a carousel.
Yeah, got to add a carousel, right?
Yep.
I don't get into, that wasn't in the original scope document. I don't, and my proposals are like maximum 5 pages long. There's no like mock-ups and, like 100 pages of waterfall project description. I'll just say to the sales director, how does that contribute to achieving our ultimate goal, which is increasing developer morale or decreasing mobile, conversion rate on mobile? And and I'll just challenge them to be like, all right, explain to me how that's going to help. If the person can explain to me how it's going to help, I'm going to want to do it.
Right.
Because that's going to get us to the goal. If the person can't explain how it's going to achieve that goal, and it's especially when it's obviously disconnected, they just kind of think, well, you've got the hood open, we might as well change everything in the engine. So if that does happen, then I'll say, look, this is maybe a good idea, maybe not a good idea. I will add it to a V2 list, and when we finish with this project, achieve this goal, then we can revisit all the stuff on the V2 list. But I need to protect the success of this project, and so I'm going to say no to that for now.
Mm-hmm. And with that, have you ever had clients, I'm guessing in your contracts you provide some sort of timeline. Have you ever had them try to reverse engineer your hourly rate out of that? I'm not suggesting that that's a thing. I've just,
right.
The dark side of me sees that happening.
No, not really. I do sometimes, and I don't agree to deadlines.
Right.
That's another thing that's unique about me because it's a fantasy, and
Sure.
It just sets the wrong expectation. And you're really, that the odds of hitting the deadline, because you're not in control of it,
right?
Because it's a project is a collaboration, so you're not in control of the deadline. The CEO of the client company couldn't make you hit the deadline, so I just don't agree to them. But I will agree to maintain, if that's the role, or like I'll agree to a sort of a living document of like here's a possible timeline.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way, in my experience, there is no way we'll finish faster than this. It will surely be longer than this. But I understand that people need to make, marketing planning and all sorts of other planning they need to do. So I understand that they want to have some idea. I won't agree to a date, but I will say, look, I think this phase will be about this long. I think this phase will be about this long. On our weekly meetings, I will update this and I will show you how much longer it's getting because it's going to get longer. But I understand that you need some kind of idea, some kind of warning if we're going to, miss an important date. Like there's a conference coming up, or a trade show, CES is coming up and we need the firmware for our Bluetooth speaker to be working before CES, or it's going to be a complete waste of $500,000. All right, good to know. What I will do is I might agree to that deadline, but then I won't agree to the scope or the exact goals. I'll say, okay, here's a subset of the project that I'm positive I can finish by then. So there are certain ways to do it, but in general, I would never agree to a deadline. I would provide some kind of a timeline, keep it updated, indicate that it's going to be longer, and I'll update you every week. So the higher ups are cool with that, and I've never had a problem with that. Mm-hmm. And no, to answer your specific question, I've never had anyone reverse engineer. It's not even a question. I'm like, look, if you guys want someone cheaper, right, I can introduce you to people that are cheaper. So. Because of that, I get a lot of people who are like, yeah, would you? But then the people who I end up with are, it's just the money's just not as much of a question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a quality client, right? And one of the other things you talk about in hourly billings, and that's I thought was really interesting. Another example I've had in the past, and I just kind of want to talk through this just for a second. You talk about a proposal teardown you did for somebody you were coaching, and you talk about how they were trying to estimate the value of the work they were doing to the business. Where you were saying, well, instead of just saying there's no way to know, you could sort of kind of guess that by implementing this software, you're going to reduce the amount of administrative work that these employees have to do. And if I can guess that they cost you about this much per hour, this could save you X amount over time, right? Mm-hmm. I've definitely had that experience before where we've done that. And the clients usually come back and said, well, that's not how much my people cost per hour, right? Or they get a little edgy about that. We're assuming this is what their expenses are. And so I know that and I've heard you talk about this before, kind of trying to figure out what is the value of the project that you're going to be doing, the impact on the business. You talked about all the questions you ask, and you've got a great list of them in the book. Is there anything else when it comes to that, when you're actually trying to get to numbers on the impact that would have? What sort of conversations are you having around? Is it around like, this will save your employees this much per hour, or you'll sell this many more widgets? And do you get pushback on that? How do you deal with those sorts of conversations?
Right. So yeah, let's drill into the why conversation a little bit more, because those are good examples. That's where I would find the information out. So when I put it in the proposal, it wouldn't be wrong, or at least be close. So at the point where I'm on my first why question, why this? You guys decided that you needed a mobile web designer to come in here and save your life. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what's the problem? Oh, our conversion rate, our cart abandonment's really bad on mobile. All right. Why don't you just add 3 customer service people and just have them email anybody that leaves their cart half full but doesn't check out? Well, would that be enough? How many customer service people would you? Why not just do that? You already have customer service people. You've already got 15 of them. Why don't you just add 3?
Right.
And what did that cost you? Fully loaded costs $300,000 a year. This is probably cost you more than that to do it with software. So why don't you just do that? And they'll say, well, we never really thought about it like that. But now that you put it like that, I guess we could. But then we've got the sort of care and feeding of those 3 additional employees. And we actually, our customer service department is already full. We'd have to add desks. We might have to move to a different building, or I might ask questions like, it's in that why this section. I might say, well, why not just add 2 extra delivery trucks? Mm-hmm. Like, well, no, it would probably take 10 delivery trucks. And I'd be like, well, how many delivery trucks do you have now? Like, oh, we only got 7. Oh, wow. So you'd have to more than double your delivery fleet.
Right.
So what that tells me, and I probably have a rough idea how much this company makes revenue wise. So I can do this kind of back of the napkin calculation of like, okay, this software project is worth more than 10 delivery trucks. Or, it's at least, what it's worth to the company is roughly around 10 delivery trucks. So, all right. So if I set a value, if that's $10 million and I can set my price, therefore at 1/10 of that, and even if I'm wildly wrong about my rough estimates, I can say $1 million for this project and not even know what I'm going to do yet. But I just from talking to them, I can see that things are so screwed up that if I had $1 million budget, I could make things way better. Then, all right, $1 million and we can achieve these outcomes. Or if that's too much, you can go with my most risky option, which is the $80,000 option or whatever. But there's a book I'd like to mention for your listeners. It's probably the most important book I've read other than direct value pricing books. But there's a book called How to Measure Anything by, what's the guy's name? We'll have to put it in the show notes. I'm spacing on his name. But it's called How to Measure Anything. And it's about how to measure intangibles in business. And when he says anything, he means anything. So morale, you name it, as intangible as you might think it sounds, legacy, brand, repute, so on and so forth. It doesn't have to be a bottom line thing like, okay, $10,000, $50,000 trucks equals blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have to always be dollars and cents. But they're going to give you dollars and cents. So you better believe that they're making a financial calculation in their head of how much it's worth for them to be able to be home every Friday for their kid's soccer game. Mm-hmm. So there is a number because they are forced to translate it into dollars to make a purchasing decision with you. So you can estimate it. at least to a meaningful level.
Well, sure. And if you're running a small business, you're also running those same calculations if you're determining whether to bring somebody else on or pay for an online service to